Hi, I'm Larry Asher, the Director of SVC, and I would like to walk you through the course track for our UX Design Certificate Program. First, let me explain how to look at this graphic. The larger squares each represent a 5-week evening class. So these classes meet one time a week for 3 hours over a 5-week interval. Where you see them stacked on top of each other, that means you're coming to class 2 times per week. But you'll notice that's only twice during the entire course. The smaller squares are workshops. Those typically happen on Saturday mornings, Pacific time, and you'll notice that they're paired. This means that they are running consecutive weeks, a 2-part workshop, 3 hours each part, a total of 6 hours. Now below those workshops, you'll see some outline rectangles. Those each represent a 90-minute career skills talk. There will be at least one of those every quarter, probably more, and those are designed to help you prepare for your job search at the end of the program. But let's go to the beginning and look at those pink squares and talk about what those are. Those are prerequisites, and it means you need to take either the 5-week Fundamentals of User Experience evening class version or the 2-part Intro to UX Saturday workshop version. Either one of them counts towards your prerequisite. They both cover the same material, one obviously in a little greater depth than the other. And what they go through are the fundamentals of user-centered design, upon which all of UX design is based. And then we'll look at the processes of creating a digital product, starting with user research, moving to information architecture, interaction design, testing, and launch. Well, after you've taken the prerequisites and you're still full speed ahead, then we start the program itself. So in weeks 1 through 10, you'll start out with user research. I just mentioned that user-centered design is really the foundation for all of UX design, and so indeed we can't design anything until we've talked to users, and how we talk to them is through research. Sometimes it's through interpreting secondary research, data that already exists. But oftentimes we want to go out and talk to users directly. Maybe they're using competitive products. Maybe they're using an earlier version of our product, and we want to understand what they like, what they don't like, what kind of devices they use, and what they would like to see in future iterations. The only way to do that is to ask them. And yes, ask them directly. So in this class, we will teach you how to conduct a user interview, how to design a research project, and then also how to report on your findings. Based on what we learn from users, we're going to want to start to organize all the content in this product that we're creating. And that's what the information architecture class is all about. So if you think of all this content, you have to put it in some logical order. And that, in many cases, shows up in the form of a sitemap, which in turn drives the navigation design for an app or a website. So that's what we will do in this class. Below that, you'll see a class called Soft Skills for Designers. And if you're not familiar with that term, it is obviously not the hard skills. It's not things like information architecture. A soft skill is learning how to simply be more effective in business. And so in this class, we're covering things like how to be a great collaborator, how to give a critique, how to gracefully accept a critique, how to manage your own time, and how to present your work. So all that is covered there. And then below that, you'll see a workshop. And that workshop is called Figma. What is Figma? Well, that is prototyping software. It runs on both Mac and PC. And it is the software that we use along the way as we're developing a product, but also in the prototyping stage, so we can actually show a user a fairly close approximation of the final product. We'll talk about Figma and prototyping a bit more. Well, now let's move on and look at weeks 11 through 20. The first class you'll take is interaction design, which you could argue is really at the core of UX design. Whenever a human being is trying to get something accomplished on a phone or a tablet or a desktop computer, they have to physically interact with that device. You know, sometimes we're going to use a mouse like this or swipe with our finger. But in both cases, it's the human body is interacting with the digital device. Well, the controls that make stuff happen. Those are all called UI controls, and they are the domain of the interaction designer. So you have to decide, let's say you want people to choose from a list of options. What's the best way to do that? Is it a drop-down menu? Is it a list with some check boxes in front of it? Is it a text field that you create for some free typing? Any of those are valid, and in this class we're going to learn what are the best methods to use for each situation and each device. You'll then translate those onto a wireframe, which is a diagram that really shows where everything sits on the page and what kind of controls are being called for. We'll take that wireframe and now prototype it. And so that's the next class, prototyping, where we'll go back, pick up the skills you learned in your Figma class, and put them to work building functional prototypes. And these are really quite amazing because you can build something as a prototype that works very much like the final product should, but you're doing it without coding, and you're doing it without taking up a developer's time. So now we will have this functioning, interactive example of your design ideas in action. The other class that happens during this period is accessibility and inclusive design. And as you can imagine, these have become even more important in recent years, where we want to make sure that whatever it is we're designing works for everybody. And that's everybody, whether they have issues with mobility, sight, hearing. It could be anything. It could be a permanent issue. It could be a temporary one. But in any event, we want to make sure that what we build can be used by everyone. The other thing we want to be careful of is that we're not designing in such a way using words or images or metaphors that only make sense if you lived a certain kind of life. And this is hard. You have to kind of get out of your own life experience, and that's really the intent of this class, is to make you more aware of what issues are that you might not even be thinking about, but that can be offensive, honestly, to people who have had a different life experience than yours. The workshop that we cover during this time in the track is design systems. Design systems are, you could think of them as like a UX cookbook, in that if you're running a very large company with hundreds of designers, you sure don't want each of them coming up with their own idea of this is what a button looks like, or this is what a drop-down menu looks like. So in these large organizations, they create design systems where all the frequently used elements are designed once and then reused again and again for consistency, but also to save time. Now let's look at weeks 21 through 30. The first class you'll take here is usability testing. And in this class you'll take the prototype you developed in the previous class, and you can bring in actual users and ask them to try some different tasks. So they will be running your prototype off a phone, a tablet, or a desktop computer, and you can measure things like time to completion. After usability testing comes Capstone. Capstone is a 10-week class where you will work with real clients. Could be a for-profit or a non-profit, and they will indeed come in and present their situation to us. And if they're having an issue with their current website or app, or there's a feature that they want to add, you will work with your fellow students in a small group and try to solve those problems. You'll have contact with that client along the way, and they'll come back towards the end of the class where you will present your recommendations to them. People wonder, like, well, does that work ever see the light of day? And yeah, actually it does, especially for the nonprofit clients. And there are several websites out there right now that were created by students who took this class and presented that work. You'll also take a workshop during this part of the track, and it's working on cross-functional teams. As you can imagine, UX designers do not work alone. You work on a team. And this is a class where you will learn about some of the other roles and some of the other people you'll be supporting, and hopefully who will be supporting you. So for example, there's the product manager. That's the business owner, if you will, of a project and responsible for the entire team. There are project managers who seek to get the work done on time and on budget. There are copywriters who are maybe supplying marketing copy, and UX writers who are supplying the UX copy for the design that you're working on. Finally, there will be the developers, the software engineers who will take your prototype and turn it into a real piece of digital product. So we need to understand what each of them do, what's important to them, and again, learn the best ways we can support them. In the final 5 weeks of the program, you'll be taking a workshop along with part 2 of Capstone, and that workshop is writing case studies. A case study is a particular way of talking about the work that you just did, walking someone all the way through the problem, the user, some of your recommendations, the testing that you did, and the metrics, why your suggestion actually provided a successful result. As we said, there's a certain way that the industry is used to looking at these things and hearing about them. We want to show you that way. At the bottom of the track, you'll see those 90-minute career skills talks. And these are all designed to help you be more successful when you go out and start looking for work. So we'll cover things like how to optimize your LinkedIn profile, how to make sure your portfolio is working as hard as it can, and any number of topics, honestly, that are focused on landing that job. At the very end of this track, you'll see a list of electives, and I'd like to explain those to you. Many people who take this program come to us with some skills already in hand. For example, we see a lot of graphic designers who want to make the pivot from graphic design to UX design. Well, because of their background, they don't need this first elective, visual design for UX. But you might. This might be new to you. And so if you want to create professional looking prototypes, decks, your portfolio website, you absolutely are going to want to know something about typography, color, and layout. And we'll teach you that in this class. The next one, UX writing, needs a little word of explanation. UX writing is all the copy that goes on an app or a website that tells you how to use the app or website. It's not marketing copy, it's instructional copy. It's the copy you see on an error message, for example. Those are words that help you navigate your way through the experience. In some cases, in large companies, they have dedicated UX writers, also called content designers, who will do that work. But in many, many places, you, the UX designer, you're doing that writing. And so to have some familiarity with UX writing, I think makes you a more marketable candidate. If you already have a portfolio going, that's great. You can take the work that you do in the certificate program and just apply it to your existing portfolio. But if you don't, this is a crucial thing that you're going to need for your job hunt. And we can help you get it together in the 10-week portfolio lab. So you don't have to know coding at all. We'll use products like Squarespace that make it pretty easy for anyone to build an attractive website. But you sure do need to know the principles of web layout and web design and web writing a bit so you can make a coherent, professional, compelling presentation. 2 more electives worth talking about. One is presentation skills. That one probably goes without saying what that's all about. You're going to be presenting. You're going to be presenting your work in an interview situation. And if you're made uncomfortable by that, some practical skills and some practice that you'll get in this class will help you be better. And finally, one that you might not be familiar with is whiteboarding and interview skills. Whiteboarding is a thing that's pretty common in UX interviews, and that is where your hiring manager will ask you to solve a problem in real time. Go to the whiteboard and map out how you would solve a problem. For example, redesign the interface for the parking meters in your city. And so they want to see not the ultimate solution, but they want to see how you think, and think on your feet, and also think with visual support that you will create on the fly on a whiteboard. So there you have it, a look at the course track and electives for SVC's UX Design Certificate Program. Hope this has been helpful and clear, but if you still have questions, and I wouldn't blame you if you did, we would be more than happy to answer them. So just drop us a line. We will get right back to you with those answers. In the meantime, thanks so much for watching this. Look forward to seeing you at an SVC class.